Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinskas.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Have you ever been in a situation where you're constantly reacting, and you don't have time to sit back and analyze and figure out what's going on? Today's guest is Josselyne Herman-Saccio, who is a transformative coach. And she has worked with people from all walks of life. And her mission in this world is to empower people to live the life of their dreams now and ultimately be unmessable with. She's going to explain to us what unmessable with means and how to incorporate it in your life so that you can have the life that you love. Stay tuned for my conversation with Josselyne. Hey, Josselyne, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm going to start with asking you, what do you mean when you say unmessable with? Because I love that word.
Don't you? I love that word too. And people either go, I love that word, or they go, what does it mean? Or I want some of that. I don't know what it is, but it sounds good. So here's what it doesn't mean. Okay. Is it doesn't mean being tough. And it doesn't mean like numbing yourself to your feelings. And it doesn't mean like not letting people get to you or something like that. So what it more is about being able to create anything you want to create with anyone at any time, under any circumstance, no matter what life is throwing at you, staying out of the world of reaction and being able to stand in the world of creation and act from there. So that's what I mean by being unmessable with.
And I love that definition. And thank you so much for explaining to us what it doesn't mean, because I think it's just as important.
Yeah.
So as you well know, this podcast caters to women in the corporate world that are trying to continue to advance in their careers. And I think this is such a perfect conversation because they want to create a persona that wants to continue to advance. And I know I saw a YouTube that you did, and you were talking about owning your calendar and creating with your calendar. And I think I really wanted to touch base with you on that, because women in the corporate world, not all of them, but a lot of them are in relationships or have kids, and they obviously have these full-time jobs. And now employers are calling people back into the office. So now women that didn't previously have to go into the office now have to go into the office.
Yes.
What do you think is a way for, or I should say, why don't you explain how people can create the life that they want by owning that calendar?
Well, that's a big question. So let me kind of take it and parse it out, right? So the first thing I'll say is, I have 3 kids and I raised them while I was running 2 companies and working pretty much full time at Landmark, leading the forum and the advanced course, and running a nonprofit and being the PTA president and, co-op president, all that stuff. So I know from which I speak here. This is not theoretical, right?
Yes.
And I have not experienced overwhelm ever. I can't remember a time that I was overwhelmed, and it all has to do with what I train people in. And the first step of that is the context, because the context in which you're functioning is decisive. And what I mean by that, I'll just demonstrate it so that people can get it, is in the context number, what is this?
Number 1.
Exactly. It's not like, confusing, right? Or a trick question. And in the context body part, what is it?
It's a finger.
And in the context direction, what is it?
You're pointing up.
Exactly. So now nothing in reality has altered.
Right.
But the moment you alter the context, everything alters, like how you see things, what's available to you, what actions you're going to take, your experience of life completely alters. So, and especially if I changed fingers, right, then your experience of life would completely alter too. So the context in which people are functioning, whether they be women or men or whatever, is going to give them their experience of life. So many people, especially women, because 70% of my clients are women, they try to do it all, which is very different than having it all. So everybody wants to have it all, but how they go about that is through just doing everything. And that's not the way to have it all. Having it all is a context. And inside of that, you need to be powerful at making requests and delegating and making invitations and creating teams around you, whether it's a team in your family or a team at work. You have to empower people around you if you're going to be somebody who has it all. And I do consider myself somebody who has it all, if I look at my life, right? And the calendar is a place where you can keep your life in reality. Otherwise, you have things in your head. That's not a good place to put stuff, because the minute you have what there is to do and handle in your head, it's also with your fears and your considerations and your irritations and your reactions. That's what all lives up there. So my coaching to people is get everything out on your calendar, schedule everything. And I have them do, like in the beginning, schedule their shower, schedule, when they're going to pay their rent, schedule when they're going to go work out. Everything goes in the calendar. So there's nothing that exists outside of reality. And I'm calling the calendar reality right now. And if you think about your calendar, like if you use Google or Apple or whatever you use, there's like chunks, right? And if you have one chunk someplace, you can't have another chunk on top of that chunk, because in physics, no two things can exist in the same place at the same time. So it's a really good way to start dealing with things from a physical perspective of reality. Now, the extra step I go is not just to put stuff in your calendar that you're going to do, but to create. This is the part to answer your question of how they can use it to create their life, create the context for everything they're doing, so that you don't have a bunch of to-dos in your calendar. You actually have a creation. What are you creating by going to the gym? What are you creating? Oh, I'm creating vitality or energy. So before I put go to the gym, I put creating energy, go to the gym.
Oh.
Creating sexiness, hot yoga, whatever it is that you're, and if you're paying your bills or going through, creating clarity, creating, financial integrity, so whatever you're creating, which you have to literally think to create, it's not just putting stuff in there, then you have a new lens, a new context for whatever that thing is to do in your calendar. So that was a big mouthful, but tell me what questions you have, or yeah, buts, or how abouts, or what ifs.
I love the way you use the calendar to create whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like you said, create vitality by going to the gym. That gives it such a different context, perspective, and it's not just a chore. Because if you're like, oh man, I got to go work out, instead of I want to take care of my body, it's time for me, I'm going to go to the gym. And by switching that up, it just changes the entire energy, energy. And I know you and I are both Landmark graduates. I did like 2 or 3 courses, and you taught Landmark education, one of the courses, for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like you've been in Landmark for 30 years. So
45 years. 40? I originally did the precursor to Landmark when I was 11.
Wow, that's incredible. So why don't we tell, or from your perspective, since you're the expert in Landmark, why don't you tell people what Landmark is?
Well, Landmark is a global education company. By the way, I don't work there anymore, so I'm not like, I have no skin in the game for this, right? But it's made a huge difference in my life and my family's life. It's a global organization that does seminars and courses around the world that are designed to cause a transformation in your view of life, your view of yourself, your view of the circumstances, so that you are set free from anything that's really limiting or constraining you. And personally, I have, produced the kind of breakthroughs you can only imagine, from getting a record deal to raising $90 million to starting my business, all from the training that I got through my participation with those courses. Now, I completed my participation, my life's work, as it were, at Landmark about over a year ago. and started on a new venture, the next chapter of my life, which was this whole art of being unmessable with, because this is something that for 25 years I've loved that word. I've, shared it. I've trained people in it in every aspect of my life, but it's not a landmark thing. It was a Josselyne thing. So now that I'm not there, I've been able to take it and now run with it, which has been the joy of my life to, at 55, create a whole new game that's as exciting as anything. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I can tell you, Landmark to me was life-changing, because the reason I went to Landmark was because I was going through a really bad divorce. And it took me 4 years to get divorced. And when I went up to the stage to talk about my divorce, the coach was like, "So what?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going through this horrible divorce." And he's like, "So what?" And I'm like, "No, you don't understand." He's like, "So what?" And obviously it was like 3.5, 4 days, whatever it was. And I went in so reactive to every single letter, because I'd get a letter like once a week, it seems, from my lawyer on how nothing was happening. And then after that, I'd get a letter and I'm like, "Oh, it's just a piece of paper with some words on it."
Amazing.
And it
Isn't
was
that amazing?
no big deal. And so that's, I think, what really saved my life. And that was really the beginning for me of personal development, like understanding it. Again, I did I did 4 or 5 courses of theirs, and it was game changing.
And
So,
it is for people. I mean, it was, when I originally, I'll tell you, my mother was the first person to participate in that kind of transformative work. And it was when my parents were separated. And this is when I was 11. And then a year later, my father did it and they got back together.
oh,
And
wow.
they just celebrated 65 years together. They're 90 and 92. And really back then was my first glimpse of what I'm calling unmessable with, was my mother, because she went into the program because she was dealing with this separation, going to be a divorce, as a victim. He was the big bad cheater and da 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 da. And she came out of that program and it was like a force of nature. She was creating and fulfilling and creating and fulfilling. And I was like, what happened
Yeah.
to this person? And I didn't have the word unmessable with, which, then I later heard the word messable with and then created this whole unmessable with thing. But the space of it was right there. And that is the beauty of transformation. And that's why it's been such a privilege for over 30 years to be a transformative coach and participate with people in those kind of breakthroughs like you had. I mean, people walk in one world and they leave in another world. And that's my intention when I work with people, is that they are able to shift from this world of reaction to the world of creation, and that they have strategies and methodologies to do it, and a muscle that they can build and develop. There is no top to the mountain,
Right.
but it's like brushing your teeth. You're never going to get there. It's kind of like just every day, but that they have something they can practice that's actionable. And that's my mission.
I will tell you an exercise that I will never forget, and I tell people about this all the time, is the exercise where we had to write down our story, and everybody's like writing and writing, and everybody's like mad and pissed off and angry, and then you pair up with someone and you read your story and you read it again, and until it just becomes, again, words on paper, and you're like,
blah 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 blah
I
blah.
can't believe I spent so much energy on these words for this story. And then it was just, it took the bite, it took the
charge.
Yes, the charge out of the situation. And then you're like, oh, I'm just going through this divorce, and it's just a process, and it'll eventually, all right, cool, I can deal with this. And that's one of
that exercise. People always go, oh, the story exercise. It's actually called the disappearance exercise, because the intention of that exercise is to disappear suffering from your life.
That's exactly what it did. So it worked.
Yes.
All right. So you are a transformative coach. I know that means different things to different people. So can you explain a little, and I know you already explained it, but can you explain that transformation, that transformative word? Like when someone is looking for a transformation, what does that mean?
I would say the simplest way of putting it is they're looking to discover the blind spots that are limiting what's possible in the areas of life that matter to them. So it's not that they're looking to improve. if you want to improve in your well-being or something, you'd hire a trainer and they're going to tell you how to improve your biceps or whatever people do, right? This is about altering your view of life, of the circumstances of yourself, or, of whatever you're dealing with. And that can only be done by discovering a blind spot that's having you see it a certain way. So once you uncover a blind spot, you have a new view of life. You have a new set of actions that are available to you, and you produce new kinds of results, most of the time elevated high performance results, which is what I'm committed to. So I'm a performance coach and a transformative coach. So I work in both worlds. Whereas, Landmark is all transformation, right? I work also in the, okay, how to, like, what's the steps, and it's not just a spatial shift, which is incredibly powerful, as you and I both know, because we've been through it. But then what? Okay. And how am I going to build this vision, and what's in the way, and ongoingly working with people to see what messes with them and fulfilling on their vision, on their dream, because once you have a dream, then the question is, okay, now what actions have to happen to fulfill on that goal or that dream or that vision? And everybody, I don't care who they are. I work with, billionaires to stay-at-home moms to teenagers. Stuff messes with people. So we work together to unearth what's the next layer that's messing with them, thwarting them, stopping them, limiting them. What's the next blind spot that needs to get illuminated so that you can eliminate the constraint?
Got it. Okay. So when I hear you say eliminate the constraint, I'm thinking about limiting beliefs. And so one of the things that I teach my clients and, people on the podcast is, a lot of times we women hold ourselves back without even knowing it, because we have limiting beliefs. So for example, someone wanted to apply for a job, and she didn't want to apply because she didn't have all of the job requirements in the job description. And we kind of talked about it. And one of her beliefs was that she needed to follow the rules for that particular job. So she was a rule follower. And, when we finally talked about it and we discovered that was a limiting belief that she had about herself, that she had to have all the qualifications, then she was able to realize that 50% of men apply not having all the qualifications of the job description. So that allowed her to get rid of that belief and then apply for a job. And she actually got the job as well.
Beautiful.
But what would you say to women, and I'm sure you've heard a million times, the imposter syndrome?
I deal with this all the time. It's not just with women, by the way, but I deal with it all the time with my clients. And, people have no idea who they are. They live in very old conversations about themselves that were mostly generated between the ages of 3 and 8 years old.
Isn't that crazy?
And they got stuck with these views of them, like, oh, I'm a shy person, I'm a morning person, I'm not an assertive person, whatever it is. None of it's real, but we function as if that's real, like this cup is real or something, right? And it's not the same kind of reality. So one of the exercises I do with, some of my clients that have that specific thing that they deal with, especially people who are in the business world or in the speaker world, like people who go to speak and they're like, oh, but who am I to blah, blah, blah. So I have them write down all their accomplishments, like every result they've produced since they were 10 or whatever. And we look at it and we start to craft a statement, a formulation statement, I call it, where they then read that to themselves in the mirror, however many times they need to do it. For some people, it's a week. For some people, it's, forever. Sometimes I have them record it and play it for themselves, but it's all factual. So it's literally like how you're looking at the facts. So it's like, I had somebody who was leading retreats for people and she kept saying, but who am I, and like, my life isn't working so good. And I go, well, how many people have you led retreats for? She's like, 800. I go, okay, 800 people. How many different companies have you worked with? She's like, 12. I was like, okay, but 12 kids. So it's all specific, measurable stuff. And then I said, and how many years have you been engaged in this whole conversation about, retreats and transformative blah, blah, blah. And she said, 20 years. And I was like, okay, so 20 years, 800 people and 12 different companies. How credible is that? And she's like, huh. because that's outside of somebody's own little talk about themselves that they have. So you have to get it down. It's funny because every time I do a podcast or, an interview, I have to send a bio. And I had to deal with this with my own bio, because when I left Landmark, I was like, I didn't need a bio. Before that, I have my entertainment company. I had Landmark. I was pretty busy. I wrote this bio and I was like, wow, I forgot that I did that. Oh, that's right. I wrote
Mhm.
3 books, and that $90 million was not too shabby for charity. Or yeah, I worked with, 20 different countries of leadership and blah, 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 like all this stuff. You've accomplished so much in your life. You just spend so much time focusing on what you haven't
Right.
accomplished that you lose sight of reality.
Yes, absolutely. I love all of that. And one of the things that I recommend to whoever's looking for a job is to set up a meeting with a few of your colleagues and ask them, what do I do well? What can I improve upon? And then, you mentioned blind spots. That's a way to uncover your blind spots
That's good.
on, what you do well. Forget about that. You already do it well. Don't worry about it. If you want to develop your skills, focus on the things that they told you that you need to improve upon, and then you can start uncovering your blind spots. And then
Yeah.
another thing that women don't do well is they don't want to brag. They don't want to showcase their accomplishments, but men do it all the time. So what would you say to a woman that is trying to get an opportunity, a promotion, but doesn't want to showcase all of her accomplishments?
I would say cut it out. That's not
I
going to
love it.
work. If somebody came to you and didn't give you their accomplishments, would you give them a promotion? I mean, it's just logic, so you've got
Yes.
to deal with what is it about saying what's so that is messing with you. What do
Mm,
you make it mean? In other words, do you make
yes.
it mean you're bragging? No, you're just saying what's so. So make the list. Here's the list. If you don't want to say it, just hand it to them.
Oh
You
my gosh,
know,
I feel like I'm in Landmark right now.
yeah.
I
But
love it.
it's
But you're
well,
right.
you can't take the Landmark out of the girl,
Yes.
because it's since I was 11, it's literally 45 years of my life. I've been immersed in the world of transformation, not just Landmark, but lots of other disciplines as well. But it's reality. When you're
Right.
related to reality, you can't be messed with. It's like literally, it's just they're either going to give you the raise or they're not, or the promotion or they're not. But if you're clear what's real, you're not trying to convince them of anything. It's like, listen, I've been here for 6 years, and, I've produced X amount of sales or an increase in blah, 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 or whatever it is you're
Mhm.
measuring, but most people don't measure. They're just in a swirl of feelings. Like, I feel like I'm doing a good job. I deserve a raise. Well, that's BS.
Right. Right.
It's like you got to be in reality. It's like, what are you producing?
That's interesting that you say that, because I have a quiz on how women are sabotaging themselves, and 60% of them don't have a strategy, a corporate roadmap. And I'm actually working in a program that just focuses on creating your 2-page corporate roadmap, because
Great.
when people don't have goals written down, and I'm sure you know this, like, they're not as successful as people that have goals that are written down.
Well, there's studies about it. I think it's like 65% less effective at accomplishing your goals if you don't write them down.
Do you feel that you're spinning your wheels and advancing your career slower than you'd like? Well, I got you, because I have a free quiz to help you figure out how you may sabotage your career advancement. Our free quiz is designed to help you identify the common pitfalls preventing you from reaching your career goals. The quiz is 100% free, and it only takes 3 minutes to complete. Take the quiz now to start taking control of your career today. The link is on the episode website. And now let's head back to today's conversation. Right. Yeah. So, and that's so interesting. Like you said, is it written down? Where are the facts? Collect the proof that you deserve to be there. And not too long ago, I did a talk at a group of engineering females. And I talked to a woman. She is a director of an engineering firm. And she told me, she's like, I don't feel like I belong there. I'm like, oh my God. So you're an engineer,
Yeah,
you're a
it's
director, you have people report, you have engineers reporting to you. Where is the proof that you don't belong there? You
yeah,
actually have
it's
proof
just
that you
absurd,
do belong
and even if you whatever, you're feeling like it is irrelevant because it's like I don't feel like a mother. Okay, are you a mother?
there.
whether you feel like it or not is somewhat irrelevant, but people get fascinated with their feelings and they get addicted to their feelings. So then they are looking for some feeling to validate something they're creating. And you don't feel like going to the gym every time you go to the gym. I mean,
Right.
take the action and the feelings will often follow. If you start creating, with someone in a conversation, well, here's what I've accomplished and here's what I'm up to and here's what you can count on from me, but it will generate the feelings.
Right. Yeah. And so when you're looking to advance, whether it's getting a raise and staying in the same position or getting a promotion, you have to create that opportunity. You have to create it in your head first, right?
Well, I don't create much in my head. I do it all out here in
Well,
paper
yeah.
because to me my head is a messy place. Like there's too much garbage in there. So I just create it out here in conversation. Like I would call you and say, okay, here's what I'm creating. Let's brainstorm. Let's see what's my
Mhm.
vision. And that's a lot of the work that I do with people is creating and having them create and activate their creation muscles, because too much of the time, especially successful people, are really good at reacting to life. Like stuff is coming at them, fires, they got to put it out and, have to deal with the kids and deal with that but that's a different muscle than
Mhm.
creation. So
Mhm.
the creation muscle gets atrophied and you have this overcompensating reacting muscle. So a
Yes.
lot of the work that I do with people is to activate this muscle and give this one a rest so that you can actually have some facility and power with creating. And you're creating only in your word, as we, talked about with the
Mhm.
context conversation. So as powerful as your word is as powerful as your creations will be, which goes back to, a lot of what you and I have in common is honoring your word is the access to high performance. And that's why the calendar is so critical for me. And what and I hate to be like hammering on this, but the calendar is a perfect place to have your word exist, because once you say it, if you don't put it somewhere, where does it exist? If I say I'll have lunch with you next week, unless I put that in my calendar, the chances of it happening are lower,
Right.
unless it's right there. And then being able to work with your calendar and move things if you need to move them, but you're moving them.
Right.
Life's not moving them. It's like, oh, I said I was going to work out today at 7. I can see now I'm going to do that at 9. And you're moving that block.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something else there, you can't move it, can you? Because no two things can exist in the same place at the same time. So you better find another place for it. So it just gives you a lot of power to create. And, if you're going to create your next stage of your career, whether it's a promotion or a raise, you better get good at creating in
Mm-hmm.
language and then making requests. Most people suck at making requests. They're just bad at it. They have to make like, I deserve it because, so they give a bunch of reasons rather than I request 10% raise, by August 1st. And then let the person deal with what you're requesting.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was going to be my next question to you as far as language. So a lot of times we tell, I think it's like 20% of women never ever negotiate.
Mm.
And so obviously when you don't negotiate, you're not creating and you're leaving money on the table. And a lot of times I think it's that women don't take the time to figure out a powerful way, like powerful phrases, powerful words, language that makes an impact. And so one of the things that I notice a lot of women do is they always speak in questions at work. So instead of speaking in questions, you need to speak in statements, but you really need to use that powerful language to create what you want. So can you expand more on what you use as far as language? Because that's really important for this audience, as far as the language that we use to go and advocate for ourselves.
Well, for sure, in terms of requesting, whenever I work with people and they're like, well, I requested it. I said, well, what did you say? And mostly what they say is not a request. You say things like, I'd really like a raise. That's not a request. It's like telling your spouse, my neck hurts. Okay, you're not making a request. And then you get pissed off that they're not rubbing your neck. It's like, you didn't ask for anything. So getting good at making clean powerful request is a skill that I think is critical for anybody in their life, not just in business, but specifically in business. So when you make a request, like I'm requesting a promotion to blah, blah, blah by this date, that gives somebody something real that they can say yes or no to. If you go, I mean, and just think of how you'd respond if somebody came to you and said, well, I really deserve a raise because blah, 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 blah. Now I'm obligated to give you a raise because you think you deserve. No, I don't ever have to deal with your request because there is no request. It's you're building a case. But if you say to me, I'm requesting a 10% raise by August 1st, I've got to then deal with, okay, am I going to say yes? Or am I going to say no? Or am I going to say, well, I'd like to, but we had a really tough quarter. So, like, and then you have to be good at dealing with yeses, dealing with nos, and dealing with yes buts. And most people aren't. They have no muscle for it. So if you start off with something that's not a real request, it's sort of a statement or building a case or an I'd like, you're going to end up with mishmash.
Yes.
At the end of it. So if you start off with a clean request, then the person can genuinely, authentically say yes or no, or I'd like to, but, and then you can deal with what they're committed to. So if somebody says yes to you, first of all, people are weird with yes. If somebody says yes, you're like, are you sure? Like, I'm not sure, like you almost, it's so bizarre. People are so funny about making requests, right? So they get weird with yes, and they also get weird with no. So if somebody says no, it's like, what's the first thing that you would say to them? Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's automatic. That's the worst thing you could do if somebody says no to you, because now they have to give you reasons. Even if they don't have them, they have to make them up. They have to literally now build a case to justify their no. So saying why not is the last thing I would coach people to do. I would have people just, or, the other thing people do is they take it personally. They're like, they don't appreciate me. Maybe this isn't the job for me, or, maybe that's why they suck and their team hates them or whatever. You end up reacting in some way. So I wouldn't do any of that. And the coaching that I give people is when somebody says no to you from a clean request, just get the no. It doesn't mean no forever. It doesn't even mean, it just means no right now in this moment. It just means no.
Yes.
So it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean they don't appreciate you. It's just no. It's like, ask me to go to lunch. Just ask me. Or I'll ask you, will you go to lunch with me on Tuesday? Say
sure.
No. No, you got to say no.
Oh, got to say no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thanks for considering it.
And that's it.
And that's it.
That is so much easier than making all of these reactions in your head that have no control and you're just, wallowing in the story that you create in your head.
It's like cuckoo town right now. A lot of times what you get from people when you make a request is a yes, but, because, people have reasons or whatever. So if you ask for a raise, we'll just use this, and you say, well, I'd really like to, but we had a bad quarter, or we're on a raise freeze right now, whatever people say. Then what you would do, this is my coaching for any request. I don't care if it's asking somebody on a date or asking for a raise or whatever. It's like, okay, so let me make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. You're committed to giving me a raise. You just don't see how to do it right now, given the finances of the company. Is that what you're saying? And then you'll get really clear if that was a real yes, but like, yeah, I really am. I just don't see how to do it. And then you could say, okay, well, can we kind of brainstorm on how we might be able to make this work maybe next quarter? Like, what would have to happen in the company for it to be the kind of condition that would make sense for a raise, or it'll be super clear they're not really committed to giving you a raise because they'll come up with 6 other reasons like, well, I'm not committed and we'll have to see what happens. And now you're dealing with a no. And you're not going to be chasing something that's not real. So you always want to be listening for and speaking to people's commitment. And the only way you can hear that is if you're really out here with somebody instead of in your drama, in your head.
It's interesting because I read something that when men say they want to request for vacation, they tell their boss, I'm taking next Tuesday off. And then women are like, would it be okay if I take next Tuesday off because I have a doctor's appointment and I have to draw and
blah, blah, blah. No, listen, I don't know about I'm taking Tuesday off. Maybe that's the setup you have at work that you can do that. But, I'm requesting Tuesday off. Can you let me know by 5 o'clock today if
Exactly.
that's going to work for you? And then if they say no, when you make a request, you have to be ready for somebody to say no or yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a demand and it's not a request, that's a different conversation. It's like if it's an inform, I'm letting you know I'm taking Friday off. Okay, you know, fine. Now, if the boss doesn't like that kind of communication, the consequence might be at some point you get fired because they
Right.
don't want to be told about your schedule. They want to be asked.
Right.
But it's a request inherently has the space for a yes or a no, or yes, but.
I love it. I think what I'm getting out of this conversation is that we need to create. We need to
Yes.
create what we want, and we need to be able to be ready for whatever is happening and recreate.
Yeah, at the next moment, and keep and create right now and right now and right now and then die.
Right.
you know
That's
or you can react and react and react and then die. Either way, it's going that direction, right?
right. And have you ever come across somebody that is just happy being miserable? That it doesn't matter what kind of suggestions you give them, or if they have a problem, you're like, well, you could do this or this or this. And they're like, yeah, but. And then after a while, I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk to that person because they're just happy being miserable. So what?
Honestly, I don't deal with a lot of people like that because by the time they come to me, they're investing in their coaching, so they're hiring me, to support them in fulfilling what they want. If it's like a girlfriend or a guy friend that's just moaning about something, I don't coach people that don't request it of me. I was going to say that don't pay me, but that's not true because I have a lot of clients that, I have 30% of my clients are pro bono. But, if you don't have some skin in the game, you're not going to be coachable.
Right.
But if you're paying somebody for the work that they're, if you're paying your trainer to, get your biceps in shape,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you're willing to throw away that money and not take their training, their coaching, shame on you, but it's your money.
Right. Now, let me shift the conversation a little bit to our young women, our little girls that are 7, 8, 9. I read a study that says that girls' confidence peaks at age 9. Would you take the same principles that we've been talking about and apply them to our young girls and women? Because what I have noticed is that when women are coming into the workforce right out of college, they're already coming in doubting themselves, lack of confidence. And I wholeheartedly believe that we, as parents, as educators, we kind of have to go back all the way to the beginning and help these young girls and women recreate. What would the conversation change?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't work with young people that
Mhm.
age, like professionally. I don't work with them. I mean, I know some because my friends have kids and my own kids, went through that age. They're older now, but I don't think it would be a difference. I think that especially the language I use is pretty accessible. It's not like super heady or psychological or anything. It's, react, create. I mean, there's one letter difference, it's not like, you don't need a whole thesaurus to work with me. So I think it would be translatable. I don't have a commitment to creating a kids program, but if I were working with somebody like you or somebody that had kids, I would say use it with them and test it out and see, what sticks.
Right. And I know the Landmark Forum has a program for children, I believe, and then also a teen program, right?
Yeah, since COVID, we haven't really been doing them. I heard they were going to do a teen program for the first time since COVID in London. I think right around now. So I'm not sure if that's back up and running, and maybe one in Singapore. I think this is all from memory, which is my head, which is not a good place to get stuff. Go to their website if you're committed to finding out about that stuff. But I mean, obviously, all my kids participated in those programs, and they're remarkable human beings. And what
Oh,
makes them
gosh.
remarkable is they can create anything.
Love it. Now, I do have to ask you, you were a pop star.
I was
Tell
sitting.
me a little bit about that.
Well, that was, my God, this is over 30 years ago, right? And this was my dream since I was 4. And when I was 5, my father, and I were sitting in that car, and I said, "Why aren't you painting?" And he said, "You can't do your art as your career." And I said to myself, "You can't do your art as your career." And that was it. Right. But then I was in a transformative, or the forum. When I was in the forum, when I was in my early 20s, all of a sudden I saw that could be maybe not the truth. Maybe that's a decision that I made when I was 5, and my infinite wisdom of 5, and just stuck myself with it, for all those years. And it was so true and so real. It was real, like this cup is real, right? But it loosened in that moment when I saw that. And I wasn't even the one on stage, like you said. It's like somebody else was talking. I don't even know what they were saying, but you have insights, you have blind spot, you see
Yes.
blind spots in your own life. So I left there with this kind of loosened limiting belief, loosened. And within 3 weeks, I had a record deal.
Gosh,
I know. And
Josselyne.
I'm telling you, it's magical, but not mysterious, because I started taking actions consistent with being a singer. I recorded a demo. I started introducing myself to people as a singer instead of a producer. And, I started taking the actions. I scheduled a show. And then all of a sudden I get this phone call 3 weeks into this experiment, right? This woman says, "We're starting a female version of New Kids on the Block, and we heard you're a singer." And I'm like, "You heard I'm a singer? Like, how?" They had talked to like one of the 30 people I had introduced myself to as a singer in those 3 weeks, who told them I was a singer. And I ended up getting that record deal. And we had a #1 record in 1912 or 1993, 30 years ago. And that was a dream come true. And that's when I got committed. And I was already leading at Landmark, by the way, leading seminars. And I got committed to making people's dreams come true and developing their ability to be unmessable with, because that limiting belief messed with me. For 15 years, I was that it wasn't possible to be a singer and make money or have that as your career or whatever. And then I started my entertainment company to empower other people to fulfill their dreams in the entertainment world. And then the nonprofit, because I wanted to spread out from just entertainment. And the same thing in all the coaching and leading that I've done over the last 35 years has all been with that vision in mind, for people to live their dreams now, not someday, and be an unmessable with force of nature in the process.
Oh my gosh, Josselyne, I love it. Okay, so you've given us a ton of great content, but are there 2 tips? Well, let me rephrase that. I request that you provide us with 2 tips that people can apply to their careers or life.
Well, the first tip is connected to the calendar thing. Go through your calendar for the next week, and just on every item, create a context for every item. Create, why are you doing that thing? What's the purpose of having that meeting? Why are you in that? Is it just because you have that meeting every week, so now you're just going through life? Or what are you creating out of being in that meeting? And do that with every single thing in your calendar. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, I'm really big on promising, because I think promising is a very powerful tool to create your life, to create a future that wasn't going to happen. If I promise I'm going to meet you for lunch next Tuesday, now there's a future that wasn't, now something is there that wasn't there. And promising is pure creation. So I have a whole, on my website, a free game for 5 days you can do called the Promise Game. And I would invite people to do that game, or just create promises for yourself. But that game really sets you up on how to do it. But create a promise, like, I'm going to, bring joy to 5 people today, and then live from that promise that day and see what happens.
I love that. Those are fantastic tips. Well, thank you, Josselyne, for everything that you have shared with us. I really want everybody to take what Josselyne said, and it's create, create, create. I mean, that's what we're here for, to create a life, a better life, whether it's a better life in your home, a better life in your job, in your company, and
in your community, in your world, whatever game you want to play, but it's all from creation.
And you will be unmessable with if you do that. Right? Yeah. Right, Josselyne?
I love it. I love it. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again. Any final words, Josselyne?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to, express my passion for being unmessable with. This is, what my life is about. So I just love the opportunity to have the conversation with you.
Well, thank you. And I love it. Once again, I'm going to end where I started, which is, I love the word unmessable with. So thank you for creating it.
Yes. Yay.
All right. Thanks. Josselyne is an incredible transformation coach. And I love that she created the Unmessablewith term because it is a fantastic term. She leaves us with 2 tips. Tip number 1 is to create context around your calendar entries. So for example, if you're dreading going to the gym and you have on your calendar, go to the gym, switch that around and create a context around going to the gym, which will now become living a healthy life. Tip number 2, she says, keep your promises. Promising is a very powerful tool, and you can create your life that wasn't going to be there had you not kept that promise. She also has a free game on her website called the Promise Game. If you want to get in touch with Josselyne, all of her contact information is going to be on the episode website. And in case you have not taken my free quiz that will give you an idea on how you're sabotaging your career advancement, the link to the free quiz will also be on the episode website. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.